Well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Huddersfield subcommittee, and we'll start. Oh, and obviously, people that are going to be phoning in, welcome to them as well. Item 1, then, membership of the subcommittee. Well, apart from Councillor Uppall, we're all here, but Councillor Akhtar is substituting for her. Item 2, minutes of previous meeting. Somebody like to move the minutes of the last meeting? Councillor Sokol, I'll second that. So, Councillor, if you got that, Richard?
Yeah, check.
Right. All those in favour, please show. Are we all in favour? Anybody who isn't, please shout up. Thank you. Item 3, declarations of interest in lobbying. So we'll start.
Do you want to go around, Chair?
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay. So if we start with Councillor Akhtar.
You're on mute.
None.
He's on mute. He's off mute now.
Yeah, none.
Okay. Councillor Armour.
Yes, I've received an email about item 9 on page 19, which cites a legal opinion put forward by an expert, and it's from two families, Booth and Morton. I have then had emails, two emails actually, from Liam Sparrow outlining what intends to say to this committee. I've taken no action on any of those. Thank you.
Councillor Armour, can you just confirm which item or which page number that Liam Sparrow one was, please?
Yes, my apologies. It's page 95, item 11 from Mr. Sparrow. And I've no DPI.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you. Item 9, page 19, had emails from objectors and the expert advice as well. No action taken. Item 11, page 95, I've been lobbied by objectors as well as the applicant. I called it into committee. I think I should also say that the address of 10 Plains, Marsden, is actually a previous address of mine. However, it is 12 years ago since I left that address, and it has changed hands several times. So I don't think that should preclude me from taking part in the meeting. I don't personally know Mr. Sparrow. Thank you.
Noted, thank you.
Councillor Davis.
Yes, very similar. Item 9, have had two emails, one from David Sykes and again from Mel Booth, both on the Wesley Avenue issue, and also item 11 from Liam Sparrow, email about that item as well. I've taken no action on any of those.
Thank you. Councillor Homewood.
Yeah, thank you. Same really. So two emails in relation to page 19 from David Sykes and Mel Booth, and two emails from Liam Sparrow on page 95. No action taken.
Councillor Lee Richards.
The same as other councillors, I've received emails regarding item 9 and item 11. No action taken.
Councillor Marchington.
Yeah, I've received the same emails on item 9 and item 11. I'm not taking any action on those.
Councillor McGuinn.
Yes, I received two emails against application on page 19, and I also received an email from Jason McCartney. And item 11, I received an email from the same person that they were councillors in favour of that application.
Thank you. Councillor Sarwar.
Thank you. I received emails on item 9 and 11. No action taken.
Thank you. Councillor Smith.
Yeah, emails received from Mr. Sykes and Mr. Booth on item 9 and Mr. Sparrow on item 11. No action taken.
Thank you. Councillor Stockoff.
Yes, yes, Chair. I got email from item 9, couple of email and a solicitor, legal officer letter, something. I'm not sure I got a email from them 11, item 11, but I would like to declare interest on the last item, number 12, page 105. It's very my close relative. So I think it would be better for me to leave the room, yeah, not to take part in those. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Allah.
Yes, thank you. Item number 9, page 19, and item 11, page 95. No action taken.
And Councillor Lyons.
Yes, pages 19, 79 and 95, no action taken, just emails.
That's it, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Admission to the public, item 4.
We have no private items,
No.
Chair.
Deputations and petitions,
None received, Chair.
item 6, public question time.
No questions received, Chair.
Item 7, a review of planning appeal decisions. To receive an overview of planning appeal decisions, January to December.
I think, Chair, I think it's
Julie Stead.
Eddie Worth, is it, that's going to be doing the presentation?
Right.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Ellie Worth. I have undertaken an analysis of the success of appeal decisions within the Huddersfield area. As you can see, between January and December 2020, 53 appeal decisions have been received, of which 85% were dismissed. This is similar to the data last recorded in 2018, which stood at 90% of appeal decisions within this area being dismissed. 4 out of the 53 appeals were regarding tree works applications, and 5 applications for an award of cost were lodged, of which 1 has been awarded. 45 out of the 53 appeal decisions were determined under delegated powers. Of these, 89% were dismissed. 8 applications were determined by members of this committee, whereby 5 have been dismissed. I have also compared the statistics against central government data, which shows the council to be above average on non-major applications. With regards to compliance, 142 notices have been served throughout the district last year. Of these, 8 enforcement notice appeals have been received in the West area, all of which were dismissed and the enforcement notices upheld in favour of the council. In comparison to 2019, there has been a significant increase in the number of complaints requiring investigation throughout the district. This is from 381 to 598 complaints. In turn, this has also led to an increase in the number of formal notices being served, which is up from 87 to 142 last year. This is a percentage increase of 63%. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That concludes that one. So move on then to item 8, planning applications.
Chair, could I just make my health warning for people viewing?
Yes, please.
Thank you. In the interest of transparency and protection in the integrity of the planning process, members who are not on the committee and have indicated that they wish to speak or observe the meeting are Councillors Donald Firth, Councillor Patrick and Councillor Greaves. Thank you.
Thank you. So then we'll move on then to the planning applications, page 19, which is the Wesley Avenue Netherthong. And the first speaker
Which case officer I think will present first.
Okay, case officer, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Kate Mansell, Development Management Master Planner in the Majors and Minerals team. This is item 9 on the agenda, application 2020-91146, related to land to the west of Wesley Avenue in Netherthorne. It is an outline application to consider the principle of residential development and the means of access into the site only. Members will recall that the application was deferred at the last subcommittee in December last year, principally to review highway safety and the impact of the proposal on the highway network. I will briefly review the details of the application, but the focus of this presentation is on the reasons why it was previously deferred. A full assessment of the proposal with regard to all other matters and against local planning policy and national guidance is set out in the report before you. Before I start, can I also draw members' attention to details of an additional representation and technical note, including photographs, submitted by a local resident, which is summarised and assessed in the update report. And I understand that members were sent a copy of this representation prior to the meeting. As you will recall, this is the extent of the application site. It lies to the west of Wesley Avenue, here, and to the north of Holmdale Crescent. Myrie Lane adjoins the site to the north at a lower level. This slide shows the approach to the site along Wesley Avenue. As you can see, some of the existing residents choose to park on the road and pavement. The top two photos show the site taken from the end of Wesley Avenue. The two bottom images show the character of Myrie Lane and also how the site banks steeply along its northern boundary down to the road. This aerial view shows the site's relationship to the wider settlement of Netherthorne. Bringing it forward for housing would not extend development any further into the countryside than the existing properties on Holmdale Crescent to the south. There are two matters to consider in determining this application: the principle of residential development for up to 36 dwellings and the means of access into the site. The slide on the right is taken from the Kirklees local plan and confirms that the site is allocated for housing with an indicative capacity of 38 dwellings. Developing the site for up to 36 houses would therefore accord with the local plan in principle. The slide on the left is an indicative layout for 33 units. It is purely illustrative. The actual layout of the site, the appearance of the houses, their scale and landscaping are reserved for future consideration. They do not form part of the assessment before you today. Turning to the reasons why this application was deferred, I will deal with the site access first and then the cumulative impact. This slide shows how access into the site would be achieved from Wesley Avenue. It would be taken from the end of Wesley Avenue as an extension to the existing road. The existing turning head at the end of the road would become redundant, and the vehicular access would continue from Wesley Avenue along a broadly straight alignment. Within the site, the access would widen out to a 5.5 metre carriageway with a 2 metre footway on each side. This is consistent with the Council's Highway Design Guide. One of the reasons for deferring the application previously was to allow for further information to be provided to explain why the width of roads used to access the site are acceptable and to consider highway safety. A safety audit of the access has been undertaken since the last committee and is detailed in the report, paragraph 10.22. As you can see on this aerial photo, Wesley Avenue is currently a cul-de-sac with a carriageway width of 4.9 metres. As set out in the report, this is more than sufficient for 2 cars to pass or a car and a lorry. Its width is obviously less than 5.5 metres, which is the typical width of an adopted carriageway. 5.5 metres is also the width identified in the Council's Highway Design Guide for local residential streets to serve 200 to 300 dwellings, which is significantly more than proposed here. The 5.5 metre standard is also for new residential streets within new residential developments. The design guide does not establish a required width for existing streets to serve new residential development. As you can also see on this photograph, some residents on Wesley Avenue park on the road. This is not because they lack off-street parking and you can see the driveways, but it's understood they choose to do so because of the gradients of these driveways. As a result, the width of Wesley Avenue is typically narrowed on a day-to-day basis. However, based upon a maximum capacity of 36 dwellings, the proposal before you would generate a worst-case scenario of 25 trips in the morning and evening peak. Officers consider that such a modest level of traffic can be accommodated along Wesley Avenue as it is. It is a relatively short stretch of road. The driveways to the existing houses would typically be kept clear of on-street parking, so that passing places would be retained along its length, and by the nature of the road, the speeds would be likely to be low. Whilst accepting that the development would result in more cars moving up and down Wesley Avenue, guidance within the National Planning Policy Framework for refusing applications on highway grounds is very clear. They should only be refused where they would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety, or the residual cumulative impacts on the road network would be severe. Officers consider that neither is the case here, given the expected levels of traffic. For these reasons, the means of access into the site via Wesley Avenue is considered to be acceptable. Turning to the cumulative impact, this slide shows the site allocations in Netherthong within the current local plan. The allocation of these sites was based upon a rigorous borough-wide assessment of housing and other needs through the local plan examination process. So within this plan period, there are 2 other housing allocations in Netherthong in addition to Wesley Avenue. The land on off St Mary's Avenue here, and the land adjacent to 8 Mary Lane here. Both already have planning permission, which are referenced in the report, and they are either built or nearing completion. Together they amount to 52 units. The land around the village in green is Greenbelt. At the last committee, some members raised a concern that every time an additional 20 or 30 houses are proposed in Netherthong, officers say that it is a small impact. However, as this slide confirms, this application is the final housing allocation within Netherthong in this plan period. The cumulative impact of these earlier developments at Mary Lane and St Mary's Avenue were fully considered during the assessment of the Mary Lane application, which was the latter application. It concluded that no capacity improvements to surrounding junctions were necessary as a result of these developments. A traffic survey was also undertaken for that application on the section of Mary Lane south of its junction with St Mary's Road. This determined that the morning and evening peak hourly flows on this road were approximately 50 vehicles. It predicted that taking into account the St Mary's Avenue development and Mary Lane scheme, this would increase to approximately 80 vehicles per hour. This slide shows the trip distribution rates for traffic generated by this proposal, which would be in addition to these flows. As you can see in the diagram, the additional numbers on surrounding roads would be low, as the traffic is distributed on local roads. For example, in the morning peak, it would result in 1 additional vehicle turning left via Dean Avenue onto Mary Lane, 5 on Deanbrook Road and 6 onto Giles Street to Thong Lane. Since the last committee, officers did explore whether any measures were being considered to improve the existing highway network around Netherthong Village, but no specific schemes were identified. In any event, it remains the view of officers that the modest level of traffic that would be generated by this proposal, taking into account the traffic from previous developments, could not be considered to have an unacceptable impact on highway safety, nor a severe cumulative impact, particularly as it is the final allocation in the village in this plan period. For these reasons, and having regard to the full assessment of the proposal set out in the committee report before you today, including the Section 106 contributions to be secured, related to affordable housing, open space, education, sustainable transport, and the maintenance and management arrangements for open space and surface water drainage, it is recommended that approval of the application be delegated to the Head of Planning in order to complete the list of conditions, including those set out in the report, and the sealing of the Section 106 agreement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Right now, speakers.
Yeah, okay. The first speaker we have, Chair, is Jason McCartney, and we'll contact him now.
Right, thank you. Right, members, can I just say we're having a break now? We're having a problem for just for a couple of minutes to sort the problem. But what I'm proposing as well is that we have a further break after this item, because it's going to go on for, I would assume, quite some time. So we'll have at least a 10-minute break after this this item.
If you move to go
way.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed for your time. Good afternoon, everyone. As you know, I'm Jason McCartney, Member of Parliament for Colne Valley. So, Chairman, members of the committee, thank you for your time today. Now, it's clear you had huge reservations and concerns about this application when it was last in front of you. This really is a totally unsustainable development. And I'll just ask you, please listen very carefully to the upcoming contributions, which will give you the clear planning evidence and information for you to be able to recommend and vote on a motion for refusal. On highways and flooding, this application should be refused. Please also look closely at the technical notes from a highways specialist on highways and drainage. And can you also please note that the flooding concerns can't just be dismissed as a one-off, because these are repeated instances of flooding which will get so much worse in Netherthong if this application is passed. Can I also please ask you to look at the photographs provided by local people who live in Netherthong, and they have to deal with the highways issues and flooding issues in their community day by day. The photographs really do show the severity of the issues that they're facing. And finally, look, I appreciate you need clear evidence and planning reasons for refusal. You will be given that from the contributors. Can I just say thank you for listening and thank you for trying to do the right thing for local people.
Thank you, Jason.
The next person we have is Mel Booth. I'll contact them now, Chair.
Right.
Can you hear me okay, by the way?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Hello, Mel. This is the chair. What I'll be doing, you'll be getting 3 minutes, but I'll give you a warning if you go further or try to go further. 30 seconds to say you've got 30 seconds left, and then you'll be cut off. Okay.
That's fine.
So if you want to fire away.
Elected members, this application should be rejected because it would have a severe and unacceptable impact on highway safety. Wesley Avenue is only 4.9 metres wide, and with residents forced to park on pavements on both sides because of narrow, steep drives, it is effectively a dangerous 70-metre plus long bottleneck of just 3 metres wide. The updated highways report, rather than offering plausible mitigation for improving road safety in Netherthong, which is what members asked for, seeks only to deflect from the fact Kirklees' own highway design guide clearly states that access roads need to be 5.5 metres wide. The updated report is also factually incorrect in stating the manual for streets recommends a minimum width of 4.8 metres. This is deliberately misleading, as that width is only illustrative. The manual for streets clearly states this is not a recommendation. As Councillor Homewood said at the last hearing, Kirklees specifically rejected the 4.8 metre width and put in 5.5 metres for good reason, and there are no special circumstances here. A total of 84 parking spaces are provided in the proposed development, so if you consider sending that massively increased amount of traffic down such a narrow single track, and to suggest it will be safe for them to weave in and out of parked vehicles is truly frightening. The developer has proposed adding a pedestrian access path, which this steep path with steps will not be suitable for the elderly, disabled, pushing prams or wheelchairs. They will have to do what the rest of us do, walk down the middle of Wesley Avenue, putting them in enormous danger. There were 209 objections to this application, a huge proportion of the village, and the ward councillor on this committee knows only too well the narrowness of the roads, the difficulties for traffic and the danger to pedestrians locally. Should any of you be in doubt, you should have read and digested the Independent Highways report submitted by residents and prepared by the highly respected Alan Davis of DTPC. He highlights how this plan would put people's lives at risk. Furthermore, the council have been sent new and compelling evidence the grass strip at the end of Wesley Avenue does not form part of the adopted highway. We are told that this is being dealt with by your civil litigation team, but as of 12:30 today, an answer had not been received from
30
them.
seconds.
The dangers of Wesley Avenue speak alarmingly for themselves in any case, but the council seem determined to ignore the fact it is not a proven access. It should be rejected anyway on safety grounds. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Right, so the next speaker
Jason Morton.
we have is Jason Morton, that's correct, yeah. So I'll try and get over him now.
To let you know that we're having a 5-minute pause now. We're having all kinds of problems here.
Okay, so we'll be back on live stream in about 5 minutes. We're going to go back to Mr. Morton so he can obviously address the committee, and it goes out
to the chair.
Yeah, so here we go.
Hello again, Jason. Yes, it's the same procedure as previous. You've got your 3 minutes, and 30 seconds before I'll give you a 30-second warning, and then you'll be cut off. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Can you hear me all right?
Fine.
Good. Okay, thank you, Chair. In our view, Kirklees are attempting to gain planning for a development that they currently have no access to from the highway. This is because Kirklees believes the highway on Wesley Avenue extends to the boundary wall. This is simply not the case. Kirklees' own evidence states the adopted highway on Wesley Avenue does include the grass strip, and by Kirklees' own admission, the Section 40 agreement cannot be found. This is a baseless opinion. The documentation which does exist, however, states the list of highway measurements, the measurements themselves, and the documentary evidence regarding the boundary wall. This evidence clearly supports our position that the grass strip does not form part of the adopted highway. A second letter from our legal team was sent to Kirklees on the 24th of February. Since then, there's not been any response from Kirklees' civil litigation team. This apparent disregard to our position and the 11th hour response from Deborah Wilkes, in which it was suggested that we should have made presumptions about Kirklees' position, which is not in any way the right approach to these matters. It is not for us to make assumptions about Kirklees' position. It is for Kirklees to state their position, which Deborah has only done so in the last few hours, and even then, her response was quite limited. Therefore, we are here today discussing a proposed development that is landlocked, which makes this whole planning hearing something of an oxymoron. The bottom line is, Kirklees have themselves acknowledged that they have no physical evidence and they rely on a presumption of ownership. We are immensely frustrated by Kirklees' refusal to take our position seriously, when our evidence clearly invalidates this. Their only legal argument is to hide behind the fact that the land registry records don't support our claim. I would just like to inform the committee that this is not a land registry issue, and the crux of our argument is that the grass strip is not part of the adopted highway. This land was conveyed to us with our homes when they were built. We are prepared to proceed with an application via the courts for the matter to be determined. However, we hope that this will not be necessary and this issue can be resolved amicably and with some common sense applied. We all know this issue is contentious. Otherwise, the applicant and Mr. Anthony Green, who seeks to develop the land, would not have tried to create a legal access over the grass strip and through the boundary wall on May the 17th, 2020.
30 seconds.
After which the police were called due to his reckless and dangerous behaviour. Kirklees issued a planning enforcement notice against the landowner and all those concerned, who were oblivious to Mr. Green's endeavour at the time. We seek a resolution to this matter before any further consideration is given to the planning application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I've got Carol Booth as our next person.
Again, yeah.
Right, thank you.
Yes, it's same again, Carol. The 3 minutes and the 30 seconds, if we get that far, you'll get the warning and then you'll be cut off. Thank you.
Chair, committee members, Wesley Avenue is a totally unsuitable access to the proposed site and should be rejected on highway safety grounds. The extra traffic generated by this proposed development, expected to be more than 70 vehicles, will all have to use what basically amounts to a narrow single-track road, making it extremely dangerous for both vehicles and pedestrians alike. The Highways report offers no mitigation for improving the road infrastructure, something which members have asked for. So may I point you to a recent similar application for access, which was sensibly rejected by your colleagues on the Heavy Woolen Planning Subcommittee. It was for access along a road called Warburton in Emley. In contrast to the Wesley Avenue report, the Highways Department on that occasion did an excellent analysis on 3 separate sections of this road, all of which are wider than Wesley Avenue, and they recommended refusal, noting, and I quote, On-street parking causes problems for vehicles and pedestrians. Even the narrowest section of Warburton, where cars park on the opposite side to the houses, there is still 3.7 metres to drive a vehicle through. When cars are parked on Wesley, that gap is only a mere 3 metres. So there is more than half a metre extra room down Warburton than down Wesley. And yet it was sensibly rejected as an access. Kirklees' own published reason for the refusal was this, and I quote again, "The proposed development would intensify vehicle movement, which would increase risk to pedestrian safety and the risk of conflict between drivers due to the lack of adequate footways, visibility and space for parking. The proposed development would therefore have a detrimental impact on highway safety. This would be contrary to Kirklees' local plan policies." Those words could and should be written about Wesley Avenue. They should be the perfect epitaph to what is a dangerously flawed plan, and you should follow the lead of your colleagues on the Heavy Woolen Subcommittee and do the right thing and reject this appalling unsafe proposal. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Neil MacLeod.
Yeah, Neil MacLeod is the next on the list. I'll ring him now, Chair.
Hello, Neil, you've got 3 minutes, but I'll give you a warning at 30 seconds. And if you haven't stopped by then, I'm afraid I'll have to cut you off.
Yes, thank you.
But,
Kirklees Council was guilty of gross delays in making a local plan. And when it came under strong pressure from central government, it panicked and rushed, with the result that much was done as a desktop exercise. The facts in this case show this. They failed to pick up on the fact that the street is too narrow, the ownership of the end strip, and the 1980 appeal decision of the planning inspector. The result is that the plan is flawed due to these fundamental mistakes and as such is legally invalid. Council officials so far have not had the guts or indeed the honesty to admit their mistakes. Instead, they have chosen to try and bluff and bluster their way through by encouraging you to approve the access. The craziest example of this is highways. They said last July that their own design guide required a 5.5 metre width, but this street is only 4.9 metres. The local plan therefore breaks their own rules, but they nevertheless support this application because the land is in the local plan. Totally bizarre reasoning. Please do not allow yourselves to be steered or browbeaten into approving something that was a mistake from the very outset. The 1980 decision of the planning inspector is still legally good, as the independent expert witness has agreed. Please look at pages 5 and 6 of his report. The 1980 decision sets a precedent which you should follow, as it is based on facts which are even more relevant now under the current planning guidelines than they were then. There is only one proper and legal decision that you can make, and that is that the plan is invalid and should not be followed. The mistakes made are too great for you to ignore. The current rules say that if there are material considerations against it, you should not follow the plan. These matters are hugely material. Please do the right thing and reject this dangerous application. Thank you.
Thank you. Susan Sykes.
Yeah. So next speaker is Susan Sykes.
Susan, you've got 3 minutes here. When we get to the last 30 seconds, I will give you a warning, 30 seconds, and once the time is up, you will be cut off. Hopefully you won't go that far. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Susan Sykes. I've lived on Wesley Avenue for over 49 years. I would like to strongly object to this underwidth road, which is narrower than your own design guide, being used as access to this proposed development. Heavy construction traffic, including wide, low loaders carrying heavy plant, endless tipper trucks, cement lorries, large heavy goods vehicles carrying building products are going to need access down Dean Avenue, then a sharp left turn into Wesley Avenue. Residents' cars are parked on both sides of Wesley Avenue because we have no off-road parking spaces, only narrow, steep drives. If you did manage to get one of today's modern cars up or down one of these drives, there's no room to open car doors. Large and wide heavy construction vehicles will not be able to pass these parked cars, let alone each other. This means that they'll be forced to reverse blind off Wesley Avenue onto Dean Avenue, which is a busy through road. Not only this, even if wheel washing facilities are provided, they'll not stop all of the mud from the site being deposited on Dean Avenue, particularly from the muck carrying wagons. As we already know from this year's accidents at the bottom junction, this steeply sloping road is treacherous when it is slippy. The current new-built site of Myrie Lane attracts around 25 workers' cars and vans from 7 a.m. to 5 p.m. every day. The proposed Wesley Avenue development would be 66% bigger in terms of new houses being built. As our local Hull Valley South Councillor is no doubt already aware, those workers' cars and vans will end up being parked on the surrounding narrow roads that do not have pavements. It means that pedestrians, particularly children, the elderly and disabled, will be put at severe risk as they'll be forced to walk in the middle of these roads, putting them in direct conflict with moving vehicles. Walking a child to school today is already hazardous because of parked cars, and this will only get worse after lockdown with increased traffic. I urge you to follow the lead of the Hull Valley Parish Council, which has already gone on the public record to object to this development over the access from Wesley Avenue and the inadequacy of local highways. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Richard, yeah. Rachel Palmer.
Yeah, so next person we'll try and get hold of is Rachel Palmer.
Hello, Rachel. You've got 3 minutes, but when we get to the final 30 seconds, I'll give you a 30-second warning, and then I'll have to cut you off. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Rachel Palmer. I'm a resident of Wesley Avenue. In addition to the narrow width of Wesley Avenue and a lack of safe pedestrian walking routes from the proposed development, this proposal has no viable solution for surface water drainage. The developer has looked into the only 3 options for the removal of surface water. These are 1, infiltration, meaning soakaways and filter drains. This was proved to be no good after trial tests were carried out by a specialist company. 2, use of the sewer within the site vicinity. Yorkshire Water has refused permission for the site's surface water to enter the public surface water sewers near this development because these are full to capacity already. 3, the building of concrete holding tanks to store surface water underneath the proposed site and the release of this water through a pipe straight into Deanbrook Stream. This is also not a viable option because the Deanbrook Stream sits within mature woodland forming part of the historic Neverson Conservation Area. The trees growing there are all subject to tree preservation orders. This fact has been overlooked by the applicant and Kirklees Flood Authority. A drainage pipe through this woodland cannot be allowed. It could not be installed underground because it's illegal to disturb the roots of protected trees, and it cannot be installed overground. To do this would be in breach of policy LP35 of the local plan, which states that development should preserve or enhance the significance of the asset. An unsightly overground pipe would not do this. In relation to the concrete holding tanks, these would release 8 litres per second of water into Deanbrook through a pipe that, due to the elevation of the site high above the brook, will force water out at a high speed. This, according to the report commissioned from Stantec UK Limited on the impact of this development, is likely to result in erosion or scouring of the riverbank at this outlet, therefore causing damage to the bank, which is within the conservation area. In addition to this, there's no long-term planned maintenance for the proposed holding tanks to prevent these from deteriorating and becoming a flood risk in the future. Without adequate surface water drainage, a large amount of additional surface water will run off the hard standing of this development and below into Myrie Lane. This will add to the existing flooding that has already occurred during here in the last few winters, as shown in the photo pack we sent you. According to the Sanderson report for this development, rainfall is likely to increase by 30% due to climate change in the coming years, so this issue will only get worse for residents living here. The developer has exhausted all options to dispose of surface water from this development and has shown that they are unable to prevent further flooding and damage to a conservation area. Please reject this application. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye. James Frost.
Yeah, Jamie Frost. I'll try and check.
Hello, Jamie. You've got 3 minutes. I'll give you a warning at 30 seconds for your time up. If you don't stop, I'll just have to cut you off. But please carry on now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I ask you to refuse this development as there will be an unacceptable impact on highway safety and the impact on the road network will be severe. The applicant's highway report seeks to minimise this, and sadly Kirklees Highways accept the content of the report to be accurate and have based their own analysis of highway safety issues on this. The applicant's report claims that there will only be 15 vehicle departures along Wesley Avenue during the morning peak hour. This vastly underestimates the true figure. We know from the recently built Orchards estate that car ownership averages more than 2 cars per new build house in Netherthong. Indeed, the applicant recognises this, with plans to include 84 car parking spaces for 36 houses. Based on the normal traffic movements we have witnessed from the nearby Orchards estate, we can easily expect at least half the cars to leave the proposed estate during the peak morning hour. Here's why the applicant's traffic estimates are so low. They use the TRIX database, which enables those purchasing traffic data to self-select for their own purposes. They selected suburban and urban sites. Netherthong is a rural site. The data selected neglects numbers from Friday, the busiest day of the week. 21 of the 26 selected locations are flat or gently sloping and close to the transport links. Netherthong is a hilltop Pennine village with very poor transport provision. None of the survey data is from the winter months when car usage is at its highest. The areas selected average less than 1.3 cars per household. New build estates in Netherthong average more than 2 cars per household. It is claimed that a sizable proportion of new residents will walk or cycle and won't rely on their cars. This is wrong. As those familiar with Netherthong already know, none of the access roads to the village have pavements. It's not safe to walk in or out of the village. Netherthong is on a hilltop with gradients ranging from 13 to 16%. The steepest climbs on the Tour de France are above 8%, so cycling isn't a practical option. Insufficient public transport means that using the car is the only viable solution for those living here. The applicant's travel plan does nothing more than offer timetables for a bus service that is inadequate for the commuter. You have been provided with a copy of a report by Mr. Davies, a highways expert. This independent report concludes that the increased flow would have an unacceptable impact on safety and a refusal for this application should therefore be made. This is the report that Kirklees Highways should be seeking to rely on, not the applicants. Many thanks for your time.
Thank you. Robert Francis.
Yes, Chair, I'll try and ring Robert Francis now.
Very much.
Hello, hello there, Robert. You've got
Hello
you've 3 minutes now to do your submission. But when we get to the final 30 seconds, I'll give you a warning, and
okay.
once that time's up, you'll be cut off. Thank you.
Okay, fine.
Right, you can speak, Robert. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Robert Francis. I'm a resident of Wesley Avenue and I've lived here for 30 years. My house overlooks Dean Avenue. Dean Avenue was not designed to be the through road to Moor Lane that it is today. Originally, it was simply a cul-de-sac enabling Wesley Avenue to meet Myrie Lane at the junction with Dean Brook Road and Giles Street. When Dean Avenue was constructed, it served just 24 houses, as a large Denham Drive estate was not added until later. Dean Avenue was never designed to carry its current volume of traffic, let alone the additional traffic that the proposed development would bring. Dean Avenue slopes very steeply from its junction with Wesley Avenue to its junction with Myrie Lane, Dean Brook Road and Giles Street. The sightlines for motorists reaching this junction from both Dean Avenue and Dean Brook Road are severely restricted. If you look at the photographs on page 14 of Mr. Davies' Highways Assessment Report, you will see the issues with this junction. This junction is extremely busy now at peak times and will be even busier when the 22 houses currently under construction on Myrie Lane are complete. Building the proposed 36 houses in the fields at the end of Wesley Avenue would have a huge impact on highway safety, as the volume of traffic would be severe. This junction is a main thoroughfare for children walking to and from school. The lack of footpaths and the presence of parked cars on all four roads massively impact on road safety. Over recent years, several collisions have been witnessed at this junction, 3 during this winter alone. One particular accident could easily have been fatal had the mother of 2 children not had the presence of mind to pull them out of the way of a car that failed to stop and hit the wall opposite Dean Avenue. Against that wall are a street sign and a grit bin. Dean Avenue is too steep for gritter wagons to use when it's icy, and there have been several occasions when both the grit bin and the Dean Brook Road sign have been demolished by cars that have failed to stop at the bottom of Dean Avenue. In fact, the latest replacement road sign has been moved further down the road to reduce the chance of it being hit again. It is unrealistic to think that an additional development of 36 houses would only generate an extra 15 car journeys out of Wesley Avenue during the rush hour. The proposed development would have a severe impact on road safety, and I feel that the application should therefore be rejected. Thank you for allowing me to speak at this meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'll try and contact now Eric Pye.
Fine.
Hello, Rick. You've got 3 minutes to speak, but when we get to the final 30 seconds, I'll give you a 30-second warning, and then you'll be cut off if you try to go any further. Hopefully you will. Thank you.
I'm Eric Pine. I've lived in Wesley Avenue for more than 10 years. I'd like to reiterate my views about the problems of this development with regard to climate change and the environment. Since 2019, as part of the Climate Change Initiative, Kirklees Council have agreed to take into account the carbon impact of all planning applications. All natural environments capture carbon to a greater or lesser extent. So to develop greenfield sites as opposed to brownfield would invariably have a negative impact on our ability to affect climate change. There are many brownfield sites locally that should be prioritised rather than building on farmland. We are already seeing more frequent extreme weather events in Netherthong like elsewhere, and these fields do play a part in soaking up and retaining rainwater. The hard standing surfaces of the proposed development would increase the likelihood of irregular flooding on Myrie Lane. With regard to the negative environmental impact, I contend that not enough research has been done on this site. The 2 environmental surveys carried out on behalf of the applicant only covered 2 of the 3 fields. The aerial photograph, Fig 1, clearly brings only the 2 eastern fields, and the site plan on page 15 shows the same boundary. The west field is also never mentioned in the text. The west field is centuries old and has not been grazed, ploughed or improved for decades. It is therefore far more ecologically diverse. This field needs to be surveyed at a time when rare species are visible, for instance the wild bluebells, which have protected status. We already know that this field is home to ground nesting birds, newts and mammals such as hedgehogs, which have recently been added to the red list as an endangered species. It's also an important hunting ground for bats and owls. It is also evident that there has been no reference made in any of the reports to the hedgehogs that regularly cross Wesley Avenue at night. Their numbers would be detrimentally affected if there was to be an increase in traffic on this road. In conclusion, I contend that this site is a valuable environmental asset and should be protected. You should therefore refuse planning permission on these grounds. It has been stated by the planning officer that residents choose to park on the street. In my case, my drive is very steep, so it cannot be used during the frosty winter months. The drive is too narrow for the postman and delivery drivers to reach the door if any car is parked on there. Other houses have similar drives. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. Dead on.
I've got Alan Davis next, Chair.
I've got David Sykes.
Oh, I've got to apologise, you're right, it is David Sykes, so it's David Sykes.
Hello, David. I'll need to remind you that if you don't already know that you've got 3 minutes, but after 2.5 minutes, I'll give you a 30-second warning, and that to conclude or finish, and or if you don't, then you'll be cut off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I am a long-standing resident of Wesley Avenue. During the first hearing for this application, you were misled when council officers said that the Department of the Environment decision in 1980 to refuse planning permission for this same site following a local inquiry was no longer relevant. I have contacted the Ministry of Housing, Communities and Local Government and have been advised by Kelly Tolhurst MP, the Minister for Rough Sleeping and Housing, that the original decision can only be overturned if the new proposal
overcomes the original objections. As you will note from pages 5 and 6 of Mr. Davies' DTPC technical assessment report, the current planning application does not do this. On the contrary, the current application gives even more grounds for refusal. The current applicant seeks to develop 3 fields. The 1980 application was simply to develop 2 fields, with less than half the number of houses planned back then. The problems of traffic are now worse than they were in 1980 because of the cumulative effect of 103 new homes and their associated cars being added to the village and the doubling of car ownership in the UK. Additional parking on Netherthong's narrow streets has narrowed the available space for vehicles and pedestrians to safely pass. The road network in Netherthong has not been altered since 1980 to make this application more favourable. Indeed, despite your request during the last hearing, Kirklees Highways Department have not produced any plans to mitigate this problem. The council officers have tried to claim that the 1980 decision is no longer relevant because the 2 recent decisions for the Myrie Lane and Orchards housing went in favour of development. As the Minister, Kelly Tolhurst MP, has stated, each application has to be dealt with on its own merits. In the case of both Myrie Lane and the Orchards, the approach roads to those sites were already of adequate width, with ample and suitable off-road parking available for existing residents. Those sites are therefore incomparable to this development. Furthermore, the cumulative effect of traffic from those additional development sites only serves to make matters worse. The 1980 decision is still valid because the proposed development would lead to a greater risk of conflict, particularly between pedestrians and vehicles. The very reason the 1980 decision was made. You should therefore refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. I'm 0.
I've got Alan Davis next.
Hello, Alan. You've got 3 minutes, but after 2.5 minutes, I'll give you a 30-second warning if you're still going, and I'll cut you off if you try and go beyond the 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm a transport consultant acting on behalf of the local residents on highway and safety matters. A detailed report has been submitted objecting to the scheme, and today I've received a response from Highways to concerns raised, and will refer to these as well. The 1980 appeal has been dismissed as out of date and taken over by recent approvals in the area. I consider this to be an error. The inspector's views on Wesley Avenue remain valid. The latest applications do not affect Wesley Avenue, and his view was unacceptable, still remains. Throughout the application review by Highways Department and the latest update to the committee, it has heavily relied on guidance on road width and the applicant's version of the vehicle flows being small/low in number. Today, the officers have not provided a real explanation as to why their historic stance of 5.5 metres required has been set to one side. Neither the applicant, the road safety audit, Highways, or the planning presentation that you've just received today have carried out a detailed assessment of vulnerable road users in combination with increased flows and the road layouts. They have simply focused on vehicles and suggest they don't create a capacity issue, so why should there be a problem? In the absence of vulnerable road user review, the Council's highest priority, not vehicles, I have set out in detail the issues raised and the application would lead to an unacceptable impact on road safety. Wesley Avenue is 4.9 metres wide with 2 paths. They rely on many of the streets to say it's 4.8 metres, but factually on site it's parts up and therefore that is not available. The
Today says there are drives and gaps in parked cars that are passing on the streets. This may be the case, but an inspection of the road shows the gaps created by drives are not wide enough to allow a car to pull to one side and let another pass. And definitely not the case for a refuse and delivery vehicle. Thus, the access remains restricted in nature. The paths are partly blocked by cars, and thus vulnerable road users, prams, children and wheelchairs have no choice but to walk in the road and in direct conflict with vehicles. This will be compounded by the increase in vehicles and the new estate walkers, etc., as they will have no choice either. It has been alluded that a path can be provided to Mary Lane. The path shows steps, so prams, wheelchairs, etc., not catered for. In any event, this does not form part of the planning application access submission and cannot be relied on. The only walking route is Wesley Avenue.
30 seconds.
The unsafe situation on Wesley Avenue is continued onto Mary Lane, Giles Lane Junction, where restricted sight lines in all directions where vulnerable road users, again, forced to walk in the road with no safe zones in combination with increased flows. Highways have not assessed the impact of the school drop-off where car parks or walkers are in the road in combination with the application's impact. This is another area where safety is impacted in an unacceptable manner. Highways have agreed they cannot mitigate and thus suggest you accept the situation.
I've got Councillor Judith Roberts from Home Valley.
Home Valley Parish Council, yeah. Hello, Judith. Just to let
Hello, Councillor Lyons.
Just to let you know, you've got 3 minutes, but if we get as far as 2.5 minutes, I'll give you a 30-second warning, and then you'll be cut off at 3 minutes. Thank you. Carry on.
Thank you. As a councillor for Netherthong, I have, over the several years, come across situations as we have today. The new development will produce it. Hello?
Right. Councillor Roberts, if you've got your live stream on in the background, it's out of sync.
Yes, I turned it off.
Okay.
Right. Thank you. Sorry. As I said, the development is going to be needing approximately 60 cars every day to be coming in and out of this site. Will be converging on very, very narrow roads with clusters lanes. In the 8th Street access book, clusters lanes, not roads. No drivers the area. Everybody will be going, I presume, either on the bus or by bicycle or walking or in cars. Especially in the winter. The bus service does finish at 7:30 on an evening approximately, which is a problem if you work odd hours. Also, there's no pavement for children to walk to school. That's New Road, Song Lane, Mary Lane, Oldfield, and Oldfield having sandstone flooding frequently during heavy rains. Part of the village has a pinch point area where vehicles that are wanting to pass one another have great difficulty and end up going onto the pavement. So a mother with a pushchair and a child taking them to school is in great, great danger. They're trying to pass one another and it's causing severe problems with that. The parish council at the moment, I don't even know if everybody realises, is trying to encourage lessening of our carbon footprint.
But by allowing developments such as these makes a mockery of the whole situation because of the amount of concrete that will be used, the amount of cars that will be needed to come in and out. Everything in
30 seconds.
Thank you. Everything also is over 60 foot above sea level, and therefore it is difficult for older population, such as myself, to use a bike or walk. So therefore, we do need to use cars. I ask that you reject this application. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Judith.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I think, Chair, we've got Councillor Firth next.
We have. So he's given 5 minutes. How do we go with the clock? You're right with that, Andrea.
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes, can, Donald.
Oh, good, good. Well, I'm here on behalf of the people of Netherthong. I think really without going with a measure, you only have to stand at the end of Wesley Avenue and squint down it to realise that whoever idea it was to use that and say that was a good access and egress, really, I just can't believe it. I can't believe we've got officers that would have come up with something like that. The fact is that if you look around Netherthong, my daughter lives in Netherthong, so I go to Netherthong quite a bit. And she lives in the centre of Netherthong, and I have got to say it's got progressively worse over the years. It was exasperated with those houses that was built up back at Cricketers, which we didn't want, nobody wanted, but we had to have them. And then there was the 5, I think, that was built on the sledging fields at the bottom of Mary Lane, which again we didn't want, but we're told we had to have them. We put forward that it would be flooded, it would flood, it was a flood field, but nobody listened. The trouble is with some of our people down there, they do not listen. And if you don't listen, you get yourself into serious trouble. The road network into and out of Netherthong is not very good. The first road that you go out of Netherthong on, where there is enough for a white line down the middle, is New Road into Holmfirth, down to Sands. The rest of those roads, Thong Lane, Out Lane, down Dean Road, and of course the one up into Honley, Mary Lane, that's about width of an horse and cart. So, you know, we're building things where there just isn't room. And of course, all the extra cars, let's be fair, they're causing a hell of a problem. And these people who live on Wesley Avenue, I've listened to all of the complaints, and they're genuine complaints. They wouldn't have come all this way and rung in and made all this stuff if they hadn't have been worried that, you know, and I'm hoping that as a planning committee, which I've sat on, we're going to use a little bit of common sense today and throw this out, kick it where it needs to be kicked, right out into the long grass, where it'll take about 50 years to find it. It's as simple as that, because it isn't going to get any better, isn't it, the song? And of course, we're talking about global warming. It's not just global warming, it's flooding. Every time you cover green grass up, you actually create a situation where you could have a flood. A green grass field absorbs rainwater over a big area. When you build houses and put concrete down, it's all concentrated in one area. As I know, because I said when they built those houses at Scholes Moor, 4 years ago, they'd have a problem, and guess what? They've got a problem. And who has to try to sort that problem out? Your local councillor, which it shouldn't be. If people would listen to local knowledge, then we wouldn't be in this situation. I don't know, there's 5 minutes up yet, Terry. I'm nearly there.
A minute left. Give a minute.
Oh, a minute.
Minute and a half.
I might as well go to a minute. And as I said, all these people, they've gone to a lot of trouble to come on there today and tell us. And they may have repeated themselves, but I understand what they're saying. I understand the situation. I also understand that there could possibly be a ransom strip there, which nobody's taken any notice of. And I'm sorry, but our officers have been rather naughty. They haven't responded to some of these people, and really they should be doing, because after all, they are local people, they're local council taxpayers, and they should respond to them. I have to respond to them. I don't have to do, which I do. I don't make no mistake. Anybody wants or a problem, I'll respond to it. If I think it's a genuine problem, and my goodness me, these people have got a genuine problem here today. So I would ask you to flatly refuse this plan. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Donald. Councillor Patrick.
Councillor Patrick, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Has my clock started?
Not yet. You know you've got
right.
5 minutes.
I probably won't take up 5 minutes.
No, you're usually quite brief. Thank you.
Okay, can I start then?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah, well, thank you very much, Chair. Well, committee, I think the residents have given you a number of reasons to refuse this outline planning application. For me, though, the main point on which this outline application falls is access to the site. Paragraph 10.92 of the officer's report suggests that the ransom strip is a private matter, but in actual fact, the presence of a ransom strip is a material planning consideration. You will have received a letter from the solicitor addressed to Kirklees Council's legal service, which provides the proof that there is a ransom strip and that there is no right of access over it. There is no adopted highway beyond the curb. There's no access to the site. This matter was raised with the council legal service in November last year. And to this day, I understand the council, its legal teams, its highways development control team, and the local planning authority has come up with no evidence to the contrary. Last May, we saw an act of desperation by the builder who pulled down part of the wall in order to make it look like there was an access. I think he knows there's no access, and I think he knows that there's no likelihood of him winning an appeal. It's time that this application was refused. It's an outline application which includes the point of access. There is no lawful access to the site off Wesley Avenue. Therefore, the decision is straightforward. Please refuse this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we've got Alistair Flatman.
Alistair Flatman, who's the agent.
Agent, right.
Thank you.
Hello, Alistair. You've got 3 minutes, but once you've gone beyond, well, gone to 2.5 minutes, I'll give you a 30-second warning, and then if you try to go beyond 3 minutes, you'll be cut off. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Planning Committee. My name is Alistair Flatman, and I act as planning consultant for this application. Given the comprehensive nature of the report before you, the officer's clear presentation, the additional highways information presented following the previous deferral, and the positive recommendation, I do not propose saying too much this afternoon. However, I am mindful of the concerns raised by residents, and as such would like to reiterate a number of key points. This is an allocated housing site in your local plan, and as such the principle of the proposal is acceptable. The allocation of this site followed a robust assessment by the planning inspector at examination in public, where all relevant planning matters, including highways and drainage, were properly and fully considered. This site is deliverable, as confirmed in your officer's report, and it is important in ensuring the council maintain their housing land supply. The application is submitted in outline only, with means of access to be considered. We have clearly demonstrated that a safe means of access can be achieved from Wesley Avenue, and that the number of houses proposed will not give rise to any safety or capacity issues. It is noted there is no objection from to the proposal from your highways officer. The layout submitted is indicative with detailed design and layout to be agreed at reserve matters. We have, however, shown that a mix of houses, including bungalows, can be developed on the site, together with an area of open space as required by the site allocation and your heritage, biodiversity and landscape officers. We have also taken into account tree canopy areas and the need to respect space about dwellings, especially where future housing would be next to existing bungalows. As well as the indicative layout, we prepared a parameter plan which addresses these points and will form the basis for future applications. Drainage for the site has also been raised. This matter has been comprehensively addressed by the applicant with reports and surveys undertaken to demonstrate the site can be properly drained. This has included a detailed survey of Dean Brook to demonstrate it is capable of accepting surface water. We've shown 3 possible routes from the site to reach the brook, one of which would involve a route along Myrey Lane. These are all viable options and will be explored further at reserve matters in accordance with drainage conditions. Again, it is noted there are no objections from the EA or your drainage engineers. Finally, with regard to the suggested contributions for affordable housing, education and open space, these are all considered acceptable. In summary, the proposed residential development on this allocated housing site is acceptable in principle, and all technical matters, in particular those relating to flood risk, drainage and highways, have been satisfactorily addressed. There are no outstanding objections from consultees or council officers. As such, we welcome the positive report before you and respectfully request you support your officer's recommendation to approve, subject to the legal agreement. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. And finally,
we've got Karen Smith, Chair, who's speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Hello, Karen. You've got 3 minutes, but after 2.5 minutes, I'll give you a 30-second warning. And then when the 3 minutes is up, if you're still talking, I'm afraid we'll have to cut you off. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Karen Smith and I am an Associate Director of Sanderson Associates Consulting Engineers who prepared supporting information on highways, flood risk and drainage matters in relation to the proposed development of Wesley Avenue, which is before committee this afternoon. Initially, I would wish to reaffirm the facts set out in the comprehensive officer report on this application in that this site is allocated for residential development as site reference HS184 within the Kirklees local plan, which was adopted in February 2019. Therefore, the site has already been deemed appropriate for development in all respects in advance of this application. The local plan process considered all appropriate development-related matters, including means of access and drainage, with access always being proposed via an extension of Wesley Avenue. The proposed development has been the subject of significant liaison between the applicant's project team and the Council's Highways Development Management Officers, and the nature of the local highway network has been considered carefully by all parties. The applicant and associated project team has worked with the Council's professional officers to provide all the additional information requested, much of which is beyond the scope of that typically expected for the development of this scale, especially on an allocated site. This information, in the form of traffic distribution predictions and a Stage 1 road safety audit, have been submitted in response to concerns raised by local members. These concerns are not shared by the Council's own professional engineers. It is not considered that the development would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety. The residual cumulative impacts on the road network would not be severe, and therefore the development is in accordance with MPPF. This is a view shared and accepted by the Council's Highways Development Management Officers. With regards to flood risk and drainage matters, it has been demonstrated that the recommended mitigation measures will reduce the risk of flooding to acceptable levels should a flood event occur. Further information confirming the surface water flow routing through the site has been submitted in response to comments from the lead local flood authority, and in addition to this, the applicant commissioned a condition survey of the proposed outfall watercourse, Dean Brook. It is proposed to restrict the flow of surface water into Dean Brook to a rate of 8 litres per second. The associated storage will be in the form of sealed water features located to the north of the site within the open space, thus reducing surface water runoff from the site in question. Sequential and exception tests have been assessed in accordance with MPPS, and it is confirmed that the development is appropriate in this location. The lead local flood authority has confirmed that there are no outstanding issues in respect of surface water drainage and flooding. It is therefore concluded that the site can be developed without increasing flood risk to the site itself.
Right.
Members, yeah.
Members.
Remind the chair to type in wish to speak. Councillor Armour.
Councillor Armour. Councillor Armour.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I'll just make a note that although I missed part of this meeting, just by happenstance, it was also when the meeting itself was interrupted due to technical reasons. So I have listened to the evidence and I'm happy to speak on it. First point I would like to make in response to the planning consultant is that inclusion in the local plan does not actually infer deemed permission for development. It just says it can move forward to a detailed stage where we can then consider it in detail. The local plan process, in the view of some of us, was a little bit awkward in that full debate was not had in council. Having listened to all sorts of contributions, I remain totally unconvinced that vehicle and pedestrian access are adequate to this. I think there are real and demonstrated road safety concerns about this.
Who's flushing the toilet?
There's also a very major issue about whether there is or there is not a ransom strip. Of course, anybody can apply to develop on anybody's land, but that doesn't mean they're going to get permission to actually use that land. So I think that is something that really does need to be cleared up. There's a difference in legal opinion on that we need to know really about. There are real drainage issues. Yes, I've heard.
Excuse me a minute, Bill. There's somebody in the background. I've got something flushing, something running, and it's not doing your speech any good. I would ask the police to mute their mic.
One moment. Yeah, and that should have seen to the problem, Mr. Chairman, hopefully. Where was I? Yes, the drainage issue. Yes, we're going to discharge water into a brook. I'm not convinced that's going to stop flooding. There are very real concerns raised about flooding issues, and there are concerns raised about biodiversity. All in all, I am not, I'm afraid, convinced that the case for this development has been made, and I'll move that we refuse permission. Thank you.
I think there's going to be a lot more speakers on this one.
No doubt.
Who's next? Is it Donna Bellamy?
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'll actually second the refusal. I'll get that out of the way. I'm not convinced either. There's the whole ransom strip issue. I don't think that's been answered at all. Regarding highway safety, at one time I was also parish councillor, and believe it or not, the ward I covered was Netherthorne. So I actually know this ward really, really well. Highway safety has got to be a massive issue. The roads are narrow. It constantly is blocked up. I still go through, if I'm visiting that side of the Home Valley, it's awful to get a car through. I understand why the people on Wesley Avenue don't park on their drives. They are extremely steep. I've walked up them several times, and believe me, you get halfway up one and you really are out of breath. Maybe I smoke too much, or maybe that might be the reason for that. But I wouldn't say so. I've walked up and with non-smokers, so I'm not going to say I'm totally unfit. It's, you know, there's no way that those people could park on their drives if there was any ice or anything like that. They certainly wouldn't get off. Well, you would get off, but you'd slide off them. They are very, very narrow. Modern cars nowadays are a lot wider and a lot bigger than what vehicles used to be at one time. I mean, personally, I've got a car. One of them is a small one. One of them, is extremely wide. There's no particularly good bus service up there. There is a bus service, but I won't say it's particularly good. So they're not going to use public transport. It's very, very hilly. So you can't expect people to walk. You can't expect people to cycle. I just think there's so many reasons why this application is just not acceptable. And I would say on highway safety grounds, as well as the flooding, they've had quite a lot of flooding over recently. And I'm sure we've all seen photos of that. You're expecting people to walk to the school. The roads aren't safe for that. There's not pavements in a lot of areas. You're going to end up with people in the middle of the road walking. So I'm quite happy to second Councillor Armour's proposal of refusal, and I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Anthony Smith.
Thank you, Chair. We've heard on a few occasions that it's in the local plan, and I fully understand the pressure local councils are under to deliver on the requirements for new housing, and the local plan should provide the foundation for sustainable delivery of these obligations. However, perhaps this development should not have been in the local plan in the first place. It looks logical on a two-dimensional map, but the reality appears to be very different, with Wesley Avenue not providing suitable access due to its narrow width. That's a situation that's only exacerbated by the necessity for on-street parking due to the narrow design and steep slopes of the residents' drives. The topography and layout of the village is difficult, with steep slopes, narrow roads being the defining features. And this is not conducive with walking and cycling, necessitating car use, and where pedestrians are then present, or cyclists, making for a very dangerous situation. I'm not convinced that there's been suitable mitigation of the flood risk. I also note the comments in the report from Mr Davis about the 1980 refusal, and I think the situation now is worse, not better. I don't think suitable mitigation for any of those issues have been provided. I think the traffic flows are probably on the optimistic side. And then there is the ongoing legal issue of the ransom strip, which I would like clarification from officers on as to whether that provides a material consideration in the planning. But I am not convinced. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Susan Lee Richards.
Good afternoon. I'm going to leave my camera off because the sound's very poor at the moment. But I'd just like to agree with what has been said by other councillors. I think that the ransom strip is a material planning consideration that we need to know about, and I would imagine that this the plan does not take into account the flooding. So those are my two main concerns. Plus, we can't assume that people can use buses when the bus services in some of our rural areas are so poor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor James Homewood.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just a couple of points. So I agree with my colleagues just around the position of the local plan. So I understand the sites in the local plan, but I presume the reason why we go through this process is that things like parked cars on access roads hasn't necessarily been considered as a part of that. I guess that width of the road itself may have been considered, but to this level of detail, it's obviously not been looked at. I'd like, in terms of what the officer presented at the beginning, in terms of more detail, I think that was really helpful to have more detail and thinking on that. But you know, from my perspective, what it showed us was that actually, yes, there is a problem in terms of generally with the road infrastructure there that can't be resolved because it's just not possible to widen roads or to put in pedestrian walkways because it's just the nature of the village. So, you know, essentially, unless you build a new village somewhere, you can't kind of add on to the existing one in that way. So, but what it seemed to come down to me, if I understood correctly, was to say, you know, there isn't specifically any legal requirement in terms of how wide an access road needs to be. Well, there might be guidance that we've adopted, etc. But the question is whether it's kind of severely unsafe. You know, I don't know what officers, if there is a definition of what that means, because I take the point that cars are not going to be travelling quickly along this road in most likelihood because it's not going to be particularly possible to do so. But if you have pedestrians walking on the road and you have cars on the road and you have those cars needing to reverse in order to let other cars past, etc., that's unsafe, isn't it? So that's a point of unsafety. And does that tip us into the balance? That would be my concern. And you know, even if you build the footpath to take it onto Mairie Lane, as far as I can see, that's even worse scenario because there's no footpath at all there. So that doesn't improve the situation for pedestrians. So yeah, I'm the same. I'm not convinced. I mean, any comments that officers may have, you know, to tell us what they think unsafe is, or what makes that definition and why that's not met would be helpful. And I think the clarifications others have asked for on the ransom strip would be helpful because I'm not clear what the current council's position is on that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. We've got I can't see who.
Yeah,
Councillor Mohan Sokol. Mohan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Chair, I agree with my colleague, Councillor James Homewood, whatever he said, with regard to the access to this development, supposed to be development, yeah? At the last committee meeting, I didn't have much evidence, honestly, yeah? But this time, I heard a lot of evidence, both from the objector and from some local councillors and other people. Yeah, I think I have to agree with most of the members who spoke here. Yeah, because this road is not suitable for the cars going up and down. There will be a big problem unless we restricted this road only walking or cycling there, which is not possible because it's a steep hill. So I am not sure I will agree with officer recommendation to approve it, but I still listen to other members. Thank you.
Councillor Davies. Thank you.
Yep, thank you, Chair. I think, as Councillor Sokol said, I think Councillor Homewood put it very well, along with the elements of what other councillors members have said as well. For me, the issue last time was Wesley Avenue. That still is the issue in my mind. I had doubts then, and those doubts really have not been resolved. I think, as Councillor Homewood said, it's not so much an issue of cars speeding through there, but it's of cars manoeuvring
the mixture of pedestrians and cars, where we could envisage some real problems. That is not a good situation to be in. So for me, the key issue is around Wesley Avenue. I think officers have answered a number of other areas, but unfortunately for me, nothing has really changed in terms of that particular issue, and that is obviously a very key issue in terms of us considering this application.
Yeah, I can't see anybody else want to speak at the moment, but I'd like to make a contribution.
Sorry, Councillor McGuinn hasn't.
Is it Councillor McGuinn? Well, I'll give way to Councillor McGuinn. When you're ready, Bernard.
Thank you, Chair. I think we need to take into consideration the number of applications we've had in the past. We noted a particular decision in 1980. As someone has said, the road I don't think the number of cars on the road has decreased since 1980, and I don't think the roads have widened since 1980. So I think that is a real basis for looking at the present day and thinking, are things going to be better by having this building here? And I don't think we can. We've got the evidence of 2 traffic reports, which proves, I think sometimes you get what you pay for, don't you? So one says yes, there's going to be very little impact, and obviously the residents have got this report that says that there will be a major impact on road safety. So we've got a difference of opinion. So I think, but we can lean towards you and use our common sense here. What do we think we know? We think that we can say there will be a big, well, not a massive impact, but an impact on road safety, and it could be a reason to refuse this application. I think we should take into the lack of the pavement in the area and the lack of parking for residents on Wesley Avenue. So I will be supporting the move to refuse this application. Thank you very much, Chairman.
Right, have we gone blank now?
Just 1 second.
Oh, God.
Yeah. It's just the TV control.
Oh.
You
Can I speak now? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to go against the majority here at the moment, because although I'm very sympathetic to the concerns expressed by the residents of Wesley Avenue, particularly the actions of the applicant's heavy-handed dumper truck incident that could have been handled in a more open and less threatening manner. Needless to say, although I will, they only inflamed the situation and could only have increased the already considerable opposition to their plans. I'm particularly interested in Netherthong, where my daughter with my 2 grandchildren lived for a short period, where they attended the junior school. Unfortunately for the objectors, the developers have ticked all the boxes with regards to their application, particularly its inclusion in the local plan, which leaves the committee little room to manoeuvre. A reference back to the 1980s, close to 40 years ago, no longer pertain. Recently, developers appealed a similar St Mary's Avenue Netherthong application due to the committee's refusal against officers' recommendation, which led to the successful appeal, costing the council considerable sums of money. Again, it's a very serious matter to add into the mix, which could weigh very heavily in making today's decision. Should this application be approved, perhaps our MP, Mr Jason McCartney, could consider contacting the Housing Secretary, Robert Jenrick, for his protection of this land, as it is his government that has, through their planning tick box conditions, made it easier for developers to gain planning permission. Moreover, it's their intentions to make it much easier for future developments. So really, we're in a tight spot here. We've already been hammered financially in Netherthong. This is just a repeat, and I'm hoping that we don't go down that same path again. I really do. Right, any further submissions?
I think, Chair, that the legal officer and other officers may want to come in just to...
If there's no more speakers, I'll bring in the legal officer, because with this application being against officers' recommendation, we need to have their final words.
Thank you, Chair. This is Deborah Wilkes, Legal Officer. Reasons of refusal have been motions for refusal have been put on the table. We'll go back to detailing those reasons and fleshing them out, and the planning officers will do that before we move to any kind of vote. I just want to talk about the issue of the verge, the highway verge, which is a stretch of grass at the end of the avenue. This point here is the intersection of three areas of law. It's land law, civil law and planning law. Pages 47 and 57 of the officer report sets out the planning perspective of the question of the access to the site in detail, so I'm not going to go into that. But in respect of the verge itself, its status is considered to be highway by the council, and this is disputed by the objectors. And this is summarised in the officer's report as being a civil matter. So it's very easy to say a civil matter. So I just wanted to explain, or try to explain, as planning is an open and transparent affair, and it should be intelligible to everybody who listens to it. So the way I've thought about explaining this issue is to use the analogy of Google Maps. So in respect of the verge, we are focusing in on its status, and there's been assertions about ownership, about ways to resolve the issue through common sense, and being called a ransom strip, but its status is only something which can be determined in a fact-finding tribunal, i.e. a civil court, not today's planning committee. Today, we should be zoomed out, to use my Google Maps analogy, onto the bigger perspective of planning law and this application in Netherthong for outline planning permission for residential development on an allocated site with all matters reserved except for access for 30-odd dwellings, with all the attendant ramifications and benefits of that, i.e., in other words, all the material planning considerations to be taken into account. And the ransom strip is not, or the verge, or however it's described, is not one of those. I'm happy to answer any other questions, but I think an overview like that is more helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Is that it now from the officers' perspective?
Sorry, Chair. No. The planning officers are going to come in and try and flesh out the reasons for refusal that are on the table.
Yes.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Kate Mansell, Development Management Master Planner. Just to come back on a couple of points. Concerns were raised about flooding and drainage and the fact that no suitable mitigation has been provided, but in fact these matters are fully addressed in the report, and I'd refer you to paragraphs 10.66 to 10.76. So surface water would need to discharge to a watercourse, and the closest would be Dean Brook. This would be undertaken via an adopted pipe surface water sewer, and there are options available to avoid the protected trees. So full details would be required by condition, and officers are satisfied that it is achievable. In any event, statutory undertakers like Yorkshire Water have powers for drainage pipes to be put in without the need for separate TPO consent. We are aware of flooding issues on Murray Lane. I think there was one recently. That has been directly attributable to a maintained culvert, which has been badly maintained, and an open watercourse, which is under private ownership, adjacent to the public right-of-way past Brook House. The council have undertaken some emergency works as a short-term fix, and they're talking to the relevant landowners. It's a specific existing issue that is unrelated to the development proposal at Wesley Avenue. Furthermore, all new developments have restricted discharge rates that would likely improve the runoff onto Murray Lane from the currently undeveloped land. We do have an officer from the lead local flood authority available if there are any specific questions that members wanted to ask. I'm also mindful that biodiversity and ecology was raised. The site has been subject to a full ecological impact assessment, which identified that it was actually of sort of no greater than site level importance, but that isn't to dismiss that. And in fact, there is a condition on this application recommending an ecological impact assessment is provided at reserve matter stage, and also to secure biodiversity improvements. I think finally, to come back to Councillor Homewood, he raised a query about what would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. At what point does it become unacceptable? And I think that is a judgment. Officers acknowledge that the current situation on Wesley Avenue and surrounding roads, but it's the officers' view, taking into account the very modest scale of this development and the worst case scenario of 25 vehicles per hour, which is only at peak hours. Our view is that this would not meet the test or the guidance of an unacceptable impact. If you've got any specific questions, Jamie Turner is also available to ask you to respond to any highway concerns. Thank you.
Yes, I know I have two speakers now. Councillor McGuinn and then Shay Collar.
Councillor McGuinn spoken.
Councillor McGuinn.
Sorry.
He's spoken.
He's spoken.
No,
He's spoken.
Yeah.
Councillor Ola first then. Yes.
Sit down, Bernard. You're up next. I haven't spoken, so.
You've had one bite.
Yeah, I think when this came to committee back in December, there were a number of speakers, and my proposal on that day was, I think that the best route that we could have taken was probably defer it and take a step back and look at it again from an officer's point of view and also from an objective's point of view, and bring it back and look at what other things can be done. It's come back, and from a highways point of view, I accept that there's probably very little that can be changed. The lead local flood have detailed some areas of surface and soakaway, but we're kind of like stuck between a rock and a hard place at the moment, because the comments that you've made, Chair, about allocations and things coming back and financial penalties against the authority is one thing to know, but the comments that James has also made in terms of we've had robust scrutiny at allocation stage, at local plan stage, but how robust was that scrutiny? So I'm kind of at the moment in a bit of a rut. I mean, that's all for now. Thank you.
Thank you.
Chair, I think Julia will come in and maybe just go through some of the.
What about Bernard McGuinn first? But we'll have Bernard first, and then we'll have the officer back.
Okay.
Councillor McGuinn.
Okay, I'll listen to Deborah Wilkes and legal officer. In my estimation, I didn't mention the strip at all, because I realised it wasn't a material consideration for them, and I agree with you, Terry, that the chairman, sorry, that they have ticked most of the boxes, but the only box they haven't ticked, as far as I can see, is the road traffic situation, and the residents have got this report that's saying it's considered not safe, and I agree that the developers have got their own report as well, but we have to, as I said, we use our common sense. We have to. What do we think is right in this situation? And I think it's right to look at refusal. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
That's quite all right, Bernard. The officer wants another bag.
Julia will come in.
Julia,
before we go to vote.
Julia, before the vote.
Thank you, Chair. So Julia Steadman, the group leader for development management. So I just want to sort of, I suppose, reiterate some points that you've discussed this afternoon. So I think the first point is in terms of this is a housing allocation. We all understand that. It's like I say, it's likely the last one as part of this plan period coming forward in the Netherthong area. But the fact is, it is a housing allocation. So that is a material consideration. This is your up-to-date local plan, your development plan at this moment in time. So as part of this application, you're being asked, as you already know as well, to consider the access or the point of access into the site. So as part of the local plan is set out in the report, it was always envisaged that the access would be via Wesley Avenue. So that was discussed and put forward as part of the examination in public as part of the local plan. So that's something else to sort of bear in mind there. We've heard, officers have heard sort of obviously the concerns raised by members of the public and by members this afternoon, as well as leading into the committee. But I think, like I say, you need to carefully consider that this is that housing allocation and the point of access. Like I said, it's been fully assessed. I think everyone accepts that the Wesley Avenue is a narrow access into the site, and that cars do park along there. But as set out in the report, officers have advised that it's not considered to be a severe impact on highway safety as a result of the vehicle generation from this development. I've heard obviously what members have said though. I think in terms of the reason for refusal on the highways grounds, like I say, that is linked in with the narrow access route and the vehicles which park on the road at this moment in time. So we've heard that. I think if members want to expand further on that, then we can look at taking that forward. But I just want to reiterate that this is a housing allocation and the point of access was always envisaged to be from Wesley Avenue. So I don't know if members just want to just consider that a little bit more and perhaps just expand on that that reason for refusal there. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So, sorry, Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's still a highway safety issue for me, absolutely. Not just on Wesley Avenue, but even surrounding. I mean, I think there's highways problems in the whole of Netherthong. But however you look at it, I know that the report says something about, is it 15 or I don't know, I've heard that many numbers, 115, 125 at only peak times. But yet again, there's above 80 parking spaces. So that automatically tells you that there is a lot more cars. And there is going to be, you wouldn't need that many parking spaces if you weren't expecting that many vehicles. So for me, it's definitely a highway safety issue. And I'm still not convinced, and I still will be supporting refusal. Thank you.
Councillor Chiacola, have you put your name down since? Or is that the original one?
No, that's the original
one. Councillor James Homewood then.
Chair, could I come back in at a point?
You can if and when we get this list sorted, yes. We've got Councillor McGuinn for the third time, but sorry, who did? Yeah, it's Councillor Homewood now.
Yeah, and then Councillor McGuinn.
Thanks.
McGuinn.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I was just going to say, so I heard what the officer said there, and agree. You know, it was in the local plan assessment was done and access was considered, but I didn't go to the local plan hearing on this one. But I'm going to envisage that the inspector didn't get into the volume of parked cars on. And the impact that was causing to highway safety. So, you know, I think that is a legitimate consideration that we can make as part of this committee. And my concern, and that is my concern, you know, if the road even as narrow as it, you know, is anyway, if it had ample off-road parking and a clear road, you know, I'd probably be comfortable to approve it, despite the fact that I still have some concerns about the general capacity of the network in that area. But I think it's, for me, it's specifically that area of safety. And I do think the argument from my perspective would be to say that when you add in not just cars, but other sorts of larger vehicles that for access and also pedestrians essentially going to be using the same area to walk down, I think that does create, you know, safety concerns. So, that would be what I would be putting as an area for refusal. So just wanted to add that, Chair. Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor McGuinn.
Oh, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the third time. Right, I think I remember being told by Councillor McBride that even though there have been land had been allocated for development in the local plan, the important thing was the planning application and the planning decisions made by committee, where the allocations could be challenged. And I think to actually, how did this ever get into the local plan with the width for the road? That we've been told that the width for the road should be 5.5 metres for these new allocations, but you've got Wesley Avenue, which is smaller than that. This should never, I agree with James Wormwood, who's saying it should never have been in the local plan. we should reject it because it doesn't make sense. The width of the road of Wesley Avenue is non-standard for the present allocations. If this is a present allocation, Wesley Avenue is non-standard, and I think that's a good enough reason to reject this. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The officer wishes to come back again. Julia Steadman.
Thank you, Chair. So yeah, like I say, I've heard the further discussion now that members have had on the access and the highway concern there. So I think to sort of summarise on that aspect of it then, I think what members are suggesting is that in terms of the access via Wesley Avenue, you consider it to be a substandard width, especially sort of taking into account the presence of the on-street parking as well. And you feel that sort of you'd fail to provide an acceptable means of access to the site. That would be an unacceptable impact on highway safety. Is that a fair summary of members' highway concerns with regard to this scheme?
Yes. Yeah.
Councillor Armour, you wish to speak?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I stand by my proposal. I would just like to make a point. Now we're on to the highway safety specifically. We are building family homes. Families include children. Children have to go to school. They're not always accompanied as they get a little bit bigger. And I think that this exacerbates the safety concerns. So I'm worried about mixing children in with a substandard road in any case. So I stand by the proposal. Thank you.
Right. I think everything's been exhausted now before I take the vote. But what I would say is, and this is my final word, that I hope I'm proved wrong, that we don't get a repeat of what happened in Netherthong in a more or less identical situation where the committee voted against. It then got overturned and we got fined and then it was imposed on us. But anyway, I'll leave that at rest. We've got a proposition against officers' recommendation for refusal. Okay.
Yeah.
Is that you've got a proposal and a second? That was done very early.
Moved by Councillor Armour, seconded by Councillor Bellamy. I'm not sure if the officers just want to...
Has the officer got the conditions for refusal?
Yes.
Or the reasons?
Thank you, Chair. Shall I just come back? I think the reason for refusal we have is that the development of this site for residential purposes would require access via Wesley Avenue, which is of a substandard width, taking into account the constant presence of on-street parking. It would therefore fail to provide an acceptable means of access into the site and would have an unacceptable impact on highway safety, which would be contrary to policy LP21 of the local plan, which is the local policy, and guidance within the National Planning Policy Framework. Thank you, Chair.
That's it. Right. All those in favour of refusal?
I'll go around if you want for the vote, yeah. Okay, so this is voting for refusal as per the grounds summarised by Kate. So if I can start please with Councillor Akhtar.
Abstain.
Councillor Armour.
I'm for the proposal to refuse.
Councillor Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Homewood.
For.
Councillor Lee Richards.
For.
Councillor Marchington.
For.
Councillor McGuinn.
For.
Councillor Sawa.
For.
Councillor Smith.
For.
Councillor Sokol.
For.
Councillor Oller.
Abstain.
Councillor Lyon.
Against.
Okay, so that's Chair. So the application has been refused.
Yes. Yes.
You want to nurse a short break now, or?
Yes. I'm just wondering now if we ought to have a 10-minute break, or do you think we've had enough breaks?
We had enough.
What? we've had enough breaks. You don't want me to carry
Yeah,
on?
we don't want
Yes.
to carry
Right.
on.
Could do with it.
Carry on. Right, so it's page 79, and it's former Eastgate Depot, Honley, Hunferth.
Thank you, Chair. It's Neil Bearcroft, Planning Officer. I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. So this is item number 10 for the demolition of an existing building, erection of two-storey nursery and garden buildings, formation of associated parking at Eastgate Depot in Honley. The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Greaves, who has also got concerns with the hire arrangements of the proposed use, and these are further expanded within the committee update along with an additional representation which has been received. The application site, which is outlined in red on the plan before members at the moment that can be seen on screen, is located to the west of Woodhead Road. Sorry, it's located to the east of the main built-up area of Honley and located to the west of Woodhead Road and to the east of Old Turnpike. There's a listed bridge and the River Home runs to the north of the application site. The following are some photographs of the site. The top one shows the access, point of access, which will be slightly realigned. The next one at the top shows a picture from within the site showing some buildings in an area of open, partly surfaced land. The bottom left-hand corner is from the other position showing some garages, units with a storage building, and the final one is a picture of the listed bridge, which is opposite. So the plan before members is now the site plan, which shows the existing point of access that will be realigned slightly, along with new areas of a footway in the corner there to link it up with the bridge. A 15-space car park will be provided to the north of the building here, the building being roughly centrally placed, and the area to the rear, to the south, would be a playground area for the children with a covered seating area also provided. The nursery provides space for 58 children and employs 12 staff. The following are some plans of the appearance of the building. It would be two-storey and single-storey with an overall contemporary feel, but includes some traditional elements such as the stone surrounds, and stone cladding, but there would be a metal roof on it and a large flat roof section. The plan at the bottom shows the side view that would face, that you'd see from, or slight glimpse from, Woodhead Road. This plan shows the rear of the building, which would have a predominantly glazed with timber cladding, and then the other picture, the other image is the other side facing Old Turnpike. Much of the building would be obscured from different views because it's set down within the site. This is a colour image of what it is anticipated the building will look like. So you can see the contemporary elements of the metal roof, some sections of render, but an overall traditional feel. Members have a full and detailed report in front of them. However, the key considerations with this application is the impact of the proposal on visual amenity, residential amenity and highway safety. In terms of visual amenity, the site is located within close proximity to the Honley Conservation Area and the bridge to the north is listed. The proposed development, as I've said, would have an overall contemporary feel but include those traditional elements. And the removal of the buildings on site and the redevelopment of the site is considered to enhance the setting of the adjacent listed bridge and the wider conservation area. With regard to residential amenity, the closest properties are those located to the west of the site at the bottom of this image along Old Turnpike. However, it's considered sufficient separation distance is achieved, and a noise report has also been provided by the applicant setting out that the proposed use wouldn't have a detrimental impact. Hours of use would also be conditioned as well with the scheme. Finally, turning to highway safety, the scheme has been amended through the course of the application to reduce the number of children in attendance by 30%, staff by 40%, and an increase of parking by 25%. And parking levels now meet the standards that were set out previously in the UDP, which provides a good guidance in terms of the potential impact in regards to parking. In addition, improvements are proposed to the point of access with new build-outs, which would improve visibility into and out of the site, and a travel plan is conditioned, which the applicant is happy to sign up to, that would encourage pedestrian routes to and from the sites for both users and also staff. The site also benefits from an existing storage use, which is unrestricted and could potentially be brought back into use. Weighing all these factors up together, along with the comprehensive information submitted from the applicant in relation to the impact of development on the local highway network, is considered the proposal will have an acceptable impact on highway safety. The application is therefore recommended for approval as set out in the published committee report, along with the details set out in the update. Nothing further to add. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Okay. Chair, we had Councillor Greaves, who was going to address the committee, but unfortunately he's had to leave due to
work
an appointment. But he has submitted a statement which, with your permission, I can read on his behalf.
Yes, certainly.
Okay. So this is a statement on behalf of Councillor Greaves. I remain concerned about the potential impact on the highways network and the risk that this could spill over onto Honley Bridge Junction, which is just a few metres away. This is a very busy junction feeding the whole Holme Valley, with roads leading to Honley and to New Mill and Holmfirth. The applicant is sure that their proposal will not have any adverse effect. I'm not so sure. But if they see it as not being a problem, they will not resist the condition that would hold them liable. I asked the committee to defer the application and to ask Highways to add a traffic management condition that requires the applicant to manage the impact of traffic travelling to and from their site, and to make them directly responsible for any traffic issues arising from their staff or customers. This may require them to set strict drop-off and collection times, and to ensure that flow is maintained within their car park. All things that will be under their control, but impossible for Highways to enforce afterwards. That's from Charles Greaves.
Thank you.
Next speaker we've got, Chair, is Anastasia Murphy, who is speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Good afternoon, Anastasia. You've got 3 minutes, but after 2.5 minutes, I'll give you a 30-second warning that your time is running short. In other words, once it gets to 3 minutes, I will cut you off.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Anastasia Murphy, and I'm the Managing Director of Portland Nurseries. Portland Nurseries is a family-run local nursery provider with 4 sites in Linley and Edgerton, 3 of which are Ofsted outstanding. Our first site was opened 30 years ago, and we have a reputation for providing the highest quality early years education. We take the Scandinavian Forest School approach to learning, and all of our existing sites currently hold the National Eco Schools Green Flag Award, their highest accolade, acknowledging our commitment to environmental awareness within the nursery environment and the local community. Nurseries are a vital part of the community, and after speaking to local families in the Kirklees Early Years Sufficiency Team, we identified a need for more childcare places in Honley. This existing need is likely to increase further due to the new local housing developments, coupled with the predicted nationwide nursery closures caused by the pandemic. Having identified the disused Eastgate Depot site in Honley, we saw the potential to develop proposals which would bring the site back into active use, supporting the local community through employment and childcare provisions, improving access and visual amenity. We recognise the importance of working with specialist advisors throughout the design and planning process to create an exemplary, sustainable, purpose-built nursery. We've been working closely with our team and Kirklees since pre-application stage in early 2019 to develop proposals which respond to policy and address consultation responses. Safeguarding underpins every decision we make, from the location of the safety of our site to our daily activities and the positive relationships we create with parents to support children. Private nurseries do not operate as schools do. Drop-off times are staggered between 7:30 and 9:30 a.m, with a majority of children on earlier sessions to allow parents time to get to work, therefore avoiding rush hour. We have produced data to show that how we already control booking patterns and stagger drop-offs at our existing sites. We do this in line with our staff shift patterns in order to remain compliant with our child-staff ratios. We are experienced in managing the staggering of pick-up and drop-off on site, and there is data to demonstrate this process will be safely managed at Honley. We have significantly larger sites with fewer car parking spaces that only have a one-way car entrance onto busy junctions, and these sites do not experience traffic issues. At Honley, the site access accommodates two-way traffic and sufficient parking is provided, which will prevent drivers from having to wait in the carriageway. Additionally, walking and using sustainable modes of transport will be promoted to parents travelling to or from the site, which will consequently help to further reduce vehicle movement. At our other nurseries, 80% of children live within a 2-mile radius, and the remainder travelling to us on parents' established commuter routes. This site is located on a commuter route on which many of the parents will already be travelling. We are happy that the officer's report has recognised the quality of the proposal and acknowledged the amendments we've made to respond to the consultation input. The report recognises the benefits of rejuvenating the brownfield with a facility that provides care and education for children in the most pivotal years of their lives. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. And then the final speaker we've got is Josh Molnar, who's the agent.
Hello, Josh. You've got 3 minutes if you're not aware, but after 30 seconds, I shall give you a 30-second warning to wind down and finish for the 3 minutes. If you don't, I'll have to cut you off. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. My name is Josh Molnar, and I'm an architect at Sarah Wigglesworth Architects. We are experts in educational design and specialists in sustainability. We were commissioned by Portland Nurseries to design the purpose-built nursery at Honley Eastgate Depot site. Following consideration of all relevant planning policies, our proposal has received universal support from statutory planning consultees during the application process, with conditions which we can meet. In particular, we have received recognition that our proposal sensitively responds to the conservation area and heritage aspects, while providing a landscape strategy which retains original historic features, and through extensive biodiverse planting and habitat creation, promotes an ecological approach. We have worked closely with the team and Kirklees Highways to respond to highways and local resident comments, and as a result, we have developed a safe and coherent highway strategy using solid technical evidence included with this application. The supporting evidence demonstrates that even for a significantly high number of childcare spaces, a minimal number of new vehicle trips would be added to the network, to the highways network, which would not have a detrimental impact to the local traffic. We have also collected data on how Portland Nurseries' other existing sites operate from a staggered pick-up and drop-off perspective, and outlined how it will successfully work for this site within our detailed and robust travel plan. We have carefully considered all aspects of safe site access, which has been accepted by Kirklees Highways, including identifying a safe pedestrian route from Honley via Old Turnpike, widening the entrance into the site to offer separate access for pedestrians and cars with designated pedestrian crossing points, providing sufficient width for a two-way car access into the site, extending the pedestrian path to Old Turnpike and Eastgate Junction to improve visibility for both pedestrians and cars. These measures, along with substantially reducing the nursery childcare spaces and staff numbers, providing sufficient off-street parking in accordance with Kirklees policy, and managing staggered drop-off times, means that our highways proposal is safe and will not have a detrimental impact to the junction around Eastgate and Old Turnpike or traffic on Eastgate. We have commissioned an air quality assessment, which concludes that the existing proposed development would not have a detrimental impact on air quality, and given the significant reduction to childcare spaces, this less than harmful impact is even further reduced. In summary, we are proposing a sensitive, considered and appropriate proposal for this site, which can be safely accessed, will not have a negative impact on the existing junction and traffic or air quality for the local residents or children. We have received support from local residents, businesses, the planning officer and planning consultants for the new nursery who have recognised the quality this facility will offer Honley, and we hope you will also support it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
That's it, Chair.
Right. Members, I'll open with it being in my ward if members don't mind. Yeah, I share Councillor Grieve's concerns with this junction, where this entrance and exit is to this home or children's provision, and I'm just wondering, not that I'm against it, but I'm a little bit querying the numbers, and we don't know really. It's a case of suck it and see, and I'm just wondering if by some means or other they can work to these numbers, or trial it for 6 months, say, and then come back and see whether it's been a success or not. That I'll leave that with you. But it is right in the centre of Honley, more or less, hub down there. I know it's not in the centre of the village with a town centre, but it certainly is road-wise. Have we got Anthony Smith?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a very well thought out and sympathetic design. I think it's going to improve the visual amenity and bring a well-needed service to the area, create jobs. I share your concerns about the potential for traffic, Chair, but I do accept that there are what looks to be ample parking provision, given that nurseries tend to have staggered drop-off and pick-up times. I think that can be managed within the current design, and I'd be happy to support this. Thank you.
Sokol, yes.
Well, I think I will be formal.
Sorry?
No, you're after him. You're on the same time, 409, but you're below him on my list. It's electronic.
You've gone for age over beauty, Chair. You've gone for age over beauty.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Chair, we always say we need to develop brown land. We are not developing brownfield land. Yeah, this is brownfield land. It's been empty for some time. Yeah, and this proposal will create some jobs as well as the benefit to the parents to send their children to the nursery. There is need is growing up. Yeah, I understand your feeling, Chair. You said, let us see how it go about 6 months or 12 months. I think 6 months might be too short. I think at least should be, if members think, yeah, we put some condition how we go trial period. Well, it should be at least 12 months, not 6 months. Yeah. So I'm not against this application. Yeah, I'm supporting this application. But if members feel how the chair say, 12 months trial period, so I'm happy to do that. Thank you.
So we've got Shakeola.
Thank you, Chair. I think Councillor Anthony Smith's just he's highlighted everything that I was going to say. I think there is ample parking provision. There's some well thought out pedestrian points, but the main thing is with a nursery, you've got this staggered approach between 7:30 and 9 o'clock. So, I can't really see the drop off, and I'm going to struggle to see where the drop off and the collection is going to be, because you can have working parents and it's going to be all different times. I do think Honley needs this type of provision, and I'm happy to move the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Paul Davies.
Yep, thank you. Well, seeing as I'm following Sheikh, I'll certainly support that. I think I'll echo what's already been said as well. I think this is a huge improvement on what's not there now, if you like. It's brownfield. It's creating employment, but importantly, creating services that we really need, and we know there are shortages in places for parents of the children. It's always a difficult one to judge in terms of traffic, etc. I'm not really clear what Councillor Greaves means by making the owners liable, because I'm not really sure what he means by that anyway. And I'm not really sure how we would put in place a 6-month or 12-month trial for, what is looking at this a significant investment. I can't imagine, that the applicants could work on that basis. So for me, I think I'd certainly support the application. I think it certainly ticks all the necessary boxes for me.
Sorry, Chair, can you just clarify whether he seconded the motion? I wasn't sure.
Could you confirm?
Yes.
Or whether or not you seconded the.
I'll second
yes.
Sheikh's.
Thank you. Yeah.
Councillor Ulla's proposal.
Councillor Donna Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. I understand your concerns regarding the amount of traffic, but my query is more around the air quality. Would indeed a nursery actually cause more of an air quality issue than what it was before when it was the council depot? I'm just wondering, would it? I mean, I can imagine when it was the council depot, some of the vehicles entering then and, coming out then were actually probably causing more pollution than what some modern cars do. So I don't know whether it will really
I'm tempted. Yeah, I'm tempted to tell you that it was hardly used. Certainly in the latter 3-4 years, hardly used at all.
Right. Obviously, you're talking children, so the air quality does need to be good. I'm just wondering whether they could perhaps, I don't know, put some moss walls in or something like that around the edge, which would certainly help with the air quality. And, I think that way then, to probably look quite nice as well. But apart from that, I can't really see a problem, even though I do understand your concerns with the amount of traffic that could be caused. Thank you.
I've got the officer now wishes to speak. Neil Bearcroft.
Thank you, Chair. Just in terms of some of those points that have been raised, just in relation to the air quality the Councillor Bellamy raised, the applicant has done an air quality assessment, which has considered the impact from the development on air quality, and that's set out that it's not going to have an adverse impact, but the development would also bring about some more landscape and some more greenery. We've conditioned a landscaping plan, so we would have that type of greening up of the site as part of the permission. With regards to the highways, as Councillor Davis set out about any form of temporary permission, I think that would be difficult given that they're looking to completely redevelop the site. But in terms of other measures that we could potentially add, we've got a condition on there about a travel plan, so we could include, make that more robust and have a monitoring fee attached as part of the travel plan if members felt that would aid and ensure that that's sufficiently monitored. So if they felt that was necessary, you could always add that to the recommendation. Thank you.
Yeah. But would the proposer and seconder be prepared to take that on as part of their recommendation?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, I can't see anybody else to speak, so I think we need to move to the vote.
Yes, Chair. So we had, that was moved by Councillor Arlo and seconded by Councillor Davis for
officer's recommendation
of the officer's recommendation and to include an expansion of the travel plan to include a monitoring fee as well.
Yes, right.
Okay.
Yes.
So we'll go to the vote then. So we've got Councillor Akhtar.
For.
Councillor Armour.
For.
Bellamy.
For.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Homewood.
4.
Councillor Lee Richards.
4.
Councillor Marchington.
4.
Gwyn.
4.
Sawa.
4.
Councillor Smith.
4.
Councillor Sokol.
4.
4.
The line.
4.
Okay, it's unanimous, so that's been approved.
Thank you. Right, we move on then
Draw the
to.
attention to the update where there's an extra condition for relation to bats, just to make sure that's in part of the decision.
Oh, the bat. Yes.
That's fine.
Yes.
So it's noted.
Yes. Right, so now on page 96, which is the 10 Plains, Marsden, or the rear of 10 Plains, Marsden. Page 79.
Thank you, Chair. It's me again, Neil Bearcroft, Plan Officer. So this, yeah, 95, item 11. So this application seeks permission for the erection of an outbuilding at 10 Plains in Marsden, and the application is submitted retrospectively as a building is already on site. The application is brought to committee at the request of Councillor Bellamy, who's also highlighted that there are other buildings in the local area. As set out in the committee report, there have been 4 representations received for the development. So the pictures on screen show the building that's been erected on site, and in the top corner is the location plan, so in the outbuilding in the far southeastern corner of the site. Further to the southeast is the main Huddersfield-Manchester railway line, and the view of the building in the bottom right hand corner is taken from a railway bridge. So the site is located adjacent to a row of terrace properties of all similar design, stone built, and to the rear of the property is an informal access track, which can just be seen in the top image of the building. It's grass, but does form an access along the rear of the properties. The building itself is built across the majority of that area and constructed of blockwork and clad in timber with a shallow pitched roof. The following are the plans that have been submitted for the application that show a roller shutter door access. Members have a full and detailed report in front of them. However, the key consideration with this application is the impact the proposal would have on visual amenity. The proposed outbuilding is a significantly larger structure than others that are evidenced along the terrace, as it occupies the full width of the amenity space and extends to the route of the informal access shared by the applicant property and neighbouring houses. This would leave only a small area of land that will be undeveloped, approximately 2.5 metres deep by 5 metres wide, and a small yard area to the front of the property as amenity space. In this context, it's considered the proposal would represent an overdevelopment of the available land and would, by reason of its scale, form and design, be out of keeping with the character of the host dwelling and the wide local area. It will be particularly prominent in Congress feature by reason of its scale and setting. The application is therefore recommended for refusal. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Chair, we've got one speaker, Stacey Webster, who will be speaking on behalf of the applicant.
Good afternoon, Stacey. Yes, you've got 3 minutes to speak, but at 2.5 minutes, I'll give you the 30 seconds. And if you try to go any further, then I'll have to cut you off. But carry on now. You've 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Liam's read out some bullet points in response to the issues raised, so I'm just going to read them out to you. The land registry told me I can't build on the northwest, building is on the southeast. It's not the full size of the garden area and doesn't block right of way. I asked what materials I can use. Planning said any, as long as it's within measurement. The concrete pad is not in next door's garden. She actually asked if we could extend it into her garden so she could park a caravan on it. They won't get stuck in the mud. I have proof that we moved the washing pole from in front of our property to the corner of our land. It was never a boundary marking. Outbuilding is not beyond the right of way and still within measurements. The lights come on randomly after midnight and the lowest wattage bulbs are fitted. Consideration was taken in how the building looks rather than having a big steel container. I have personal motorbikes, not cars in the outbuilding. Everyone on this side hangs their washing over their right of way, not in their gardens. The washing line we have is retractable and on an easy to use hook for if any large vehicles need to pass. There's absolutely no danger when not in use. I have not blocked any of the right of way, however, a neighbour's car is permanently blocking it. We are not in a conservation area, always check with planning before being built. On our deeds, our land is marked out, it's not on common land. Structure is not oversized. The only time the right of way gets used is when people put bins out and there's another neighbour that has a motorbike who uses the right of way to get in and out. Cladding it so it looks nice and blends in with neighbours' sheds. It looks far from an industrial unit. The roller door rolls up into itself inside the building. It doesn't go over the right of way at any point. I even paid extra for it to be quiet when opening and closing. I'm not selling from the outbuilding as it's for personal use. The visitors I have are my friends who have personal motorbikes themselves who come up the right of way to my house. I do not trade from home. The rolls of cash statement is an over-exaggeration. Money is lent to me after personal circumstances due to the pandemic. In conclusion, I support all neighbours to make sure they were happy with every step I have taken, including 8 planes. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. So just, is that it?
Yes, it is, Chair.
Members? No, Councillor Lurley.
Thank you, Chair. For me, it's completely out of character. I think the design and scale as well is not really of the best. I think the officers have got it right. Happy to move the recommendation to refuse. Thank you.
Councillor Bellamy.
Thank you, Chair. As I said earlier, when we were doing interest and lobbying, etc., I used to actually live at number 10 Plains. Guaranteed it was 12 years ago. So I know the area extremely well. In fact, I know the house, I know the garden. And I can tell you 12 years ago, there was an outbuilding in exactly the same place that outbuilding is. And how I know that is because it was our outbuilding, which we actually took down when we moved, and it is now actually in my rear garden of where I am now. Our outbuilding also took up the whole width of that garden. It was, and I can tell you now, ours was actually, it was tin or metal, and bright white with brown edging, so it probably actually stood out a lot more than what this one does. I can see 10 Plains from my property where I am now. I personally don't think it stands out. You know, it's not over noticeable. When he first started to build it, yeah, you could see it, but with the cladding, it seems to just have blended in. There is other people down there that have got outbuildings, sheds, greenhouses, you name it, none of which do block the track at the back. The track at one time was used by the bin men, it isn't anymore. Like I said, non-block. There is a car blocking it, though. I will admit there is a car there, which is blocking the track permanently, so without, you know, causing problems. I've only been contacted by one objector personally, from across there. That is the only person that has raised any concerns with it. So, you know, on reflection, to me, I don't actually see a problem with it as such. It's quite funny actually, because the applicant seems to store the same things in it that I actually did, which I didn't know until just recently. So to be honest, I'll actually move that we accept it and we put it through. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Paul Davis.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with Councillor Ulla. I've looked at this, read through it, listened to the presentation, and for me, as Councillor Ulla says, it does seem fairly straightforward. I know this is never a great situation with regards to applicants in this situation, but I think the officers, as Councillor Ulla said, have got it right. And I would second Councillor Ulla's motion.
Where are we now? James Homewood. Yes.
Yeah, Chair, thanks. Just a quick question. I think the obviously the applicant, if I've understood correctly, is sort of saying, well, I did discuss this with the council and they told me I didn't need planning permission, and this is something that comes up a lot. And in his correspondence, I think he even said that he had written confirmation. I don't know if that's the case or not. Do we know whether that's actually the case, and what is the issue here? Is it that it's been built bigger than permitted development rights, or does he not have permitted development rights for something like this? Can someone just clarify what's happened if we know? Because I kind of agree with Councillor Davies and Councillor Ulla, but if he's taken advice that's been followed, it does seem a bit concerning.
Well, could we have the officer answer that question? Neil.
Thank you, Chair. In relation to the question about has he been given some advice, I believe that he may have phoned the council up and we've given him some informal advice around permitted development rights, about building a structure. But I don't think we will have seen any plans or any drawings about what that structure would have looked like. There isn't any certificate of lawfulness or anything like that. So it'll have just been some informal advice that we will have provided him.
All right, Councillor Homewood. Councillor Homewood, are you happy with that?
Well, that's the answer to the question.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Right. Councillor Armour.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at the photographs, and I do know Marsden to some extent. I used to police the area. But I don't think that this outbuilding is particularly out of place. It doesn't jar. It does, looking at the photographs, tend to blend in. The colour of the wood cladding blends in quite nicely with the stone terraces. It's at a rear. I accept Councillor Bellamy as an intimate knowledge of the area, having lived in that house. So I'm willing to accept Councillor Bellamy's view on this. She knows the area very, very well, and I'll second her proposal.
Well, I think when we go to the vote, if it doesn't get carried, then I'll go to oppose.
Yes, fine. Yeah.
If that's okay with you.
Yeah.
So because it's not really shall we say an amendment or anything of that kind. It is a direct opposite. If office recommendation fails, then we'll come to yours, because they did come first. Where are we now? Councillor Anthony Smith.
Thank you, Chair. Just following up on Councillor Homewood's question to the officer. Just for clarity, if a resident gets in touch and is provided with informal advice, are we clear to them of what the terms are of what they can do without planning permission, and what they need to do if they are what they should do if the feeling is that I'm not making myself very clear, but what I'm trying to suggest is that, yes. If somebody comes to you and says, I want to put a building of XYZ construction on XYZ plots, would that informal advice then say, to be absolutely clear before you go ahead, either get written confirmation or put in a planning application? Or do we just give them a bit of advice and then they can make a mistake and come back and end up in this situation? Is there a clear policy on that?
I'd like to know the parameters, if there are any parameters.
Indeed.
Yes, I think we will have the officer back, please, then with that question, to answer that question, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's Julia Stedman, the Group Leader for Development Management. Councillor Smith, you sort of answered it yourself in terms of, as you're all aware, we've got the formal pre-application service where we would provide like a written advice note there, or a written response to something, which is then potentially binding in if a planning application is then submitted, for example. We've then got the informal routes, which is where a member of the public can ring in, speak to Kirklees direct, and receive some informal advice there. What the advice would normally be on the back of that is to then either submit a planning application or submit a certificate of lawfulness if you think it's permitted development. So that would be the general course of advice that we would give. We would always advise people to make sure you've got something in writing before proceeding. That's what, so like I say, you did answer it to a degree yourself there. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor McGuinn.
Hi, thank you, Mr. Chair. Councillor Bellamy was talking about she used to live there and had a temporary building and was taken down. Could this be classed as a temporary building as well? Looking at the construction of it, easily take downable. Would the planning officer take that into consideration, allowing it to stay as a temporary building, not a permanent structure? A question for the officer.
I think we need the officer back again for that answer, please.
Chair, thank you, Chair. In relation to the buildings constructed of block work and then clad in timber, so I wouldn't view it as a temporary structure. It couldn't be easily dismantled.
Right. I think we've got clarity there. Councillor Homewood, are you happy with that? Yeah. Yes. You're not acknowledging me, Councillor Homewood. Are you happy with that? Yes.
I didn't ask the question, but it sounded like a good answer, so I'll say yes.
Well, I thought you asked the question. Who have we got now? I
think we've covered everyone.
Have we covered everyone?
Yeah.
Right. Well, I'll go with what's given as the first proposer and seconder for the officer's recommendation. All those in favour, please show.
Yeah.
You'll give that. Sorry, we're not showing at all.
Yeah, no worries. Right. So we've got this was moved by Councillor Allah, seconded by Councillor Davis, and it's to refuse as per officer recommendation. So if I go to Councillor Akhtar.
Refuse.
Councillor Armour. Councillor Armour.
If you're calling Councillor Armour, the audio is not very good, but I'm against the proposal.
Councillor Bellamy.
Against.
Councillor Davis.
For.
Councillor Homewood.
For.
Councillor Lee Richards.
Abstain.
Councillor Martin.
Abstain.
Councillor McGuinn.
Against.
Councillor Sarwar. Sorry, Councillor Sarwar. Sorry, I can't. So vote for. This is a vote for refusal. Can you hear me, Councillor Sarwar?
Yeah, I can.
Type in chat bar.
Councillor Sarwar, if you want to type in the chat bar whether you're for or against, we'll accept that. I'll move on whilst we're waiting. Councillor Smith.
Against.
Councillor Sokol.
Is this part of officer recommendation? Yeah, par.
Yeah. Councillor Allah. 4. Councillor Lyons.
4.
Okay, so we just need clarification from Councillor Sarwar. Can you hear me, Councillor Sarwar?
4.
4. Okay, that's
His recommendation.
okay. 2, 3. That's 7, 4. 4 against, 2 abstentions. So the officer recommendation to refuse is accepted.
Thank you. Right, we move on then. Finally, 105, 84A Crossland Road, folks.
Mr. Chair, I, as I said earlier, I leave the room now. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Yeah,
Goodbye.
Okay. Okay.
Goodbye.
Thank you, Chair. Item number 12, page 105, is the erection of a 2-storey extension and front dormer to 84A Crossland Road in Oaks. The application is brought to committee as the applicant is related to an elected member. The site is a detached stone-built bungalow with concrete pan-tile roof located within a predominantly residential area. These are the plans of the existing bungalow. These are a few photographs. This is a view from the front and a street scene showing a high hedge. This is a view from the rear where there are already dormer windows present. The proposed front dormer would be located on one side of the building, located above an existing window as shown on the plan there. To the rear would be a 2-storey side extension, 2-storey rear extension, sorry, which would occupy about 50% of the width and project 2.3 metres from the main body of the house. Members have a full and detailed report in front of them. However, the key consideration with this application is the impact on visual and residential amenity. In terms of the front dormer, this is considered to be small in scale and will be positioned above an existing window and would have an acceptable impact on the street scene. The 2-storey rear extension, while somewhat unusual on a bungalow, is located in a discrete position with a ridge height set down from the main roof, and this combined with a modest projection is considered sufficient to ensure that the design is acceptable. With regards to residential amenity, the front dormer is not considered to have a detrimental impact, and the rear extension, whilst large, is located to the north, mitigating detrimental overshadowing, and the closest neighbour, and has been set in from the side to reduce potential overbearing. The new window on the gable end would be obscurely glazed, preventing overlooking. Given these arrangements, the impact on residential amenity is considered to be acceptable and the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
No speakers, Chair.
No speakers. Members. I'm prepared to move officer's recommendation. Oh, Councillor McGlynn speaking.
Well, you just beat me. I'll second you then. So.
Well, there was a pregnant silence, so I thought that.
Yeah, well, fair enough.
It's proposed and seconded. Any speakers? All those in favour?
I'll go around the chair.
Yes, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so this is a vote for officer recommendation to approve. Councillor Akhtar.
4.
Councillor Palmer.
That's Armour and 4.
Councillor Bellamy.
4.
Councillor Davis.
4.
Councillor Howarth.
4.
Councillor E. Richards.
4.
Archington.
4.
Councillor McGuinn.
4.
Councillor Sarwar.
4.
Councillor Allah.
Sorry, 4.
Did I miss
4.
something there?
The officer recommendation is carried.
Thank you. Does that conclude today's agenda? Well, thank you for your patience today and all the, I'm afraid, the stop starts and the interruptions to it was beyond certainly my little control, but thank you again. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.